So I leave adoration that night and I go to bed. And I wake up the next morning and I have a Facebook notification. And I'm like, okay, whatever. That's normal, I guess. But I click and it's early in the morning. And some random girl from my community that I might have seen maybe once in my life, maybe twice, but definitely never had more than 2 words said to her, sends me this message. I don't really know you. Me and you have never talked. And I definitely don't know your grandmother. But I had a dream last night that I felt like I needed to tell you. I had a dream last night that you and your grandmother were sitting on a bench in heaven. Rick, listen, man. Man, I don't know what's next, man. I don't know. I don't know what's after this life, man, but can't wait for that moment.
Welcome to Cajun Miracles. I have as my special guest today, Dustin Bertrand from Abbeville, Louisiana. Welcome, Dustin.
How you doing, Rick?
Tell us about yourself.
So I guess I'll just start where I'm from. I'm from Abbeville, Louisiana, which is a little south of Lafayette, Louisiana, in case anyone out there doesn't know that. Born and raised there. I'm 36 years old. I went to Vermilion Catholic High School. After that, I went to McNeese State University on a golf scholarship. And then, yeah. So then I would say like my Catholic faith really took off in college. It was kind of formed in high school, but it was kind of ignited towards the end of my high school years, but especially in the college. I remember my religion teacher played a big part of that, Miss Reba Broussard. And so I graduated college in 2012, and that's where I kind of hit a crossroads for me. And I guess you can say that crossroads, that was the beginning part of like probably me coming, meeting you today, those 15, 16 years ago. And so when I graduated college in 2012, I discerned the Catholic priesthood or be a professional golfer, which I needed a lot of work for that.
Golfing. Did you ever know a guy by the name of Donnie Broussard?
Donnie Broussard?
He was my big brother in college from Lafayette, but he was a big golfer.
Man, Donnie.
Got most of the hole-in-ones out there in Lafayette, all the courses, yeah.
Really? No,
He died a few years ago.
I'm probably in passing as a young guy playing.
You're a lot younger than him.
Yeah, but
he's
probably
a lot older than me.
Oh, he's older than you?
Yeah,
Okay.
But anyway.
Yeah. And
so go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. No. And so wanted to be a professional golfer, but also respected my faith enough at that time to say, do I want to be a Catholic priest? Long story short, as you can tell, I didn't become a Catholic priest, but I did discern the Catholic priesthood from 2013 to 2014, about a half a year. And it was an amazing formation process. I love my time there. I was at St. Ben's Seminary College in Covington, Louisiana. And through that formation process, I discerned out in 2014 with this idea that, God had more of my heart, right? I had more of a gospel-centered heart, healed from some childhood stuff and some traumas and whatnot. But he was going to let me pick up golf again because he had more of my heart. Golf was more in this right perspective. But at the same time, I felt him kind of speak with me or tell me that I need to speak to athletes about their faith compared to their sport. And so I left in 2014, left the Catholic priesthood to be a, professional golfer, but also speak to athletes about biblical virtue, taking their faith just as serious as taking their sport. And I didn't know what that meant or where that was going to go. But like you said earlier before we got on the mic, you can't outgive God in generosity, right? And so he blessed the golf journey. By the end of 2014, I was on the Golf Channel. I was able to be a professional caddy. I was able to see behind the lines and see what it would take for me to make it there as a player instead of a caddy. But by the end of 2014, I gave up golf because throughout 2014, I would speak to athletes. I would speak to the coaches and the players, and I can't really explain it. Well, I guess I can. It's God, right? Touch of the Holy Spirit. But when I would share my testimony, when I would share biblical virtue, when I would challenge the athletes, take your faith as serious as you take your sport. You can get up for 2-a-days in football and basketball and softball, but can you get up for 2-a-days for God? When I would challenge that or I would present that and I would be done, the joy, the excitement, the peace, the fulfillment that I would experience would be greater than any golf shot I ever hit, any tournament I ever won, any foursome I ever played with, any competitive thing I've ever done in my life. And so with that being said, by the end of 2014, I gave up the fairways and greens for the gospel of Jesus Christ, is what I like to say. And I share all that to say this is kind of what brought me here to you, honestly. I'm a full-time evangelist from 2014 to now 2025. Every decision in my life, I've tried to wake up to be an evangelist for God, a missionary evangelist for God. I didn't know how that was going to look. It went from being a life coach to just a secular speaker, but to really understand through prayer and formation that every decision I've been making for the last 11 years has been to be a traveling evangelist. And by the grace of God, I've been able to do that full time for the past 8 years. So it's a little bit about me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about some special things that happened to you?
Yeah. So God has been pretty prevalent my whole life. Maybe some people would say that they've fallen away or they were away from God and never experienced God in their life. But knowingly and unknowingly, God's hand been on my life from the very, very beginning. So my college experience was a very pivotal time for me. In 2009, I was a sophomore at McNeese State University. I started feeling tired, fatigue. I'm really into my fitness, I guess you can say, and I couldn't do the workouts the coach was asking me to do in the way in which I wanted to do them and the intensity in which I wanted to do them. And so my family, or my mom more specifically, thought maybe I was depressed. I moved away from home. I wasn't by mom and my mom anymore. And they thought maybe you're dealing with some anxiety or you're dealing with some depression. So we tried to get on the medicine thing, but it wasn't that. So we did some more tests. I had a hole in my heart, actually. So in 2009, we realized the hole in my heart started to expand. And so I had a hole under my aortic valve, and it started leaking more. Some people would call it a murmur. The doctor called it a VSD, a ventral septum defect. And so we had a decision to make, right? I can continue to live this way, but I wouldn't be able to perform and operate probably on the level that I desire to operate on, right? Or I can have open heart surgery now at 19 years old in New Orleans, and I can get back to doing what I felt like I wanted to do in the way in which I wanted to do it. And so being an athlete my whole life, understanding my body, I always loved underdog stories, and I don't know, it was just a part of who I am, right? The whole warrior, I guess, mentality when it comes to sports. So I remember telling my mom and one of my friends, Travis Franks, from Lake Charles, Louisiana, I think, Mom, let's just have it now. I'm good. God's got me. I'm gonna have the open heart surgery, and I'm gonna rehab like every athlete, and hopefully in a year or two I'll be back to my regular self, if not stronger. And so in 2009, in New Orleans, Louisiana, I had open heart surgery at the Children's Hospital. But even before that, a big pivotal moment in my life happened, which was a part of the process of having the open heart surgery. And so I was 19 at the time, so I had to fill out paperwork, insurance paperwork, to get cut open and whatnot. And so one of the lines on the paperwork kind of stated that I had a 3 to 4% chance of not surviving this type of open heart surgery, which in the level of open heart surgeries, I probably had the smallest, if that's a thing, but it was a real reality. So for a 19-year-old who felt like he was Superman most of his life, I wasn't really, I don't know, I just think about dying at 19 years old, it awoken something in me. I don't know if you want to call it spiritually or existentially, I don't know, but I knew there was something that I wanted to know. And so my whole life, my biological father was never around. My mom married my stepfather when I was about 6 years old, blessed me with a younger brother his name's Shay, and I always love mentioning him because the Bible said a brother is born in a time of adversity. And my brother's been just an extremely important aspect in my life. And so blessed me with a younger brother when I was 6 years old, met my stepfather at that time. And so when my mom, out of love, right, out of love of the new family unit and the new situation, and the father figure my stepfather was trying to be and wanted to be, she would say, hey, it's time, not it's time. It's like, hey, you can call him dad. You can call him dad. But at that moment, at 6 years old, all the way to 2009, you call this a father wound, I guess you can say would be the terminology. I always wanted to know where was the dad before this dad, right? I knew internally and instinctively like this wasn't my biological father. Me and him maybe, we had some good moments, but there was a strain. There really was a strain there because something in me knew, hey, you're not my dad. Like you're my father figure, but where was dad before this, right? And obviously, as I got older in my adolescence and trying to make a name for myself and trying to be a man in the world, I started facing some challenges that I couldn't defend myself. And it kind of stemmed back from, my biological father in a way, indirectly. And so 2009, I finally approached my mom right before open heart surgery. I said, hey, Mom, listen, I'm older now. I didn't just fall from the sky. I was like, I know how all these things work now. Where was my dad? Where has he been? Who is he? Matter of fact, I don't even know who he is. And she's like, well, we'll talk about this, whatever, tomorrow or something. And I was like, I really want to know. Like, now I need to know. Mom, I'm really nervous about this surgery. Can we talk about this finally? And so the next conversation in August, like I tell everyone, is a conversation that kind of changed my life in the course of like my internal disposition as a man. It was in Abbeville, Louisiana, south of our airport, 306 Natasha, behind our pool house, over some gravel rocks on a green picnic table next to a gray Lincoln owned by my grandmother. Me and my mom sat down and had a conversation that really changed my life. And she began the conversation, honestly, just by crying. By crying and saying, Dustin, you've been wanting to know this for so long, and I really don't have the answer for you. I really don't know. I really don't know. And so I knew this was going to be a conversation I wasn't expecting. And she kind of walked me through a very intense season of her life. She was 25 years old at the time. And some of her girlfriends wanted to go out one night, and they went out. But the thing about that was she did not end up going home with her girlfriends. The only thing she can remember is waking up in this hotel building, this apartment building, not knowing how she got there, who brought her there, and no one was around her. But her woman's intuition told her something might have happened to her. And so just for the sake of, time and the meeting of this podcast, about a month or two later, my mom thought she was sick. She wasn't sick. She was pregnant. And so she realized what had happened to her that night that she woke up not knowing anyone was around her. And if you haven't caught on to the story, unfortunately, my mom was date raped. She was drugged, and somebody, still don't know at this time, took advantage of her, robbed her innocence, and she became pregnant. And I call that my first miracle that I've witnessed or experienced because there's a certain percentage that many women who are raped, whether it be knowing who did it or not knowing who did it, have an abortion. And so I would say that would be when I realized that, I realized God worked a miracle in my mom's mind, in my mom's strength, in my mom's heart, because she did think about having me aborted. And to the point where all of a sudden she just decided not to. And so I would say that would be the hand of God protecting me in my mother's womb in a miraculous way. And I'm very fortunate, to be honest, Rick, because not everyone gets that verdict, right, in a sense, or gets that opportunity to life. And then she didn't just give me life. She also decided to be my mom for the last 36 years. So I would say, Rick, that's the first of many that we'll get into, but that would be the first time that I felt a miracle, my conception story, how God kind of brought me into this world. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting to me too. It definitely was. So
you're here. What else?
Yeah, and so I'm here, right? So my mom has me, and I start living life. And then the next one, and it's funny, these first couple of miracles that I like to tell y'all about, I didn't know them. I didn't know they were happening to me till after. It was as I got older, I was like 3 or 4 years old. It was right at the age of where you can talk a little bit as a kid. You would know that better than me, Rick. I don't have any kids. So I think it was like 2 or 3, maybe. Me and my mom were living together. This was before she met my stepfather. We were just living in Abbeville, Louisiana. We had this little single, like 2-bedroom, 1-bath, little Cajun house on Thomas Street, Abbeville, Louisiana. Very just simple living. And we're just doing our daily day thing, right? And all of a sudden, my mom back then, she wasn't the most church-going person ever, but she had sacramentals and things laying around the house and whatnot. Well, she used to carry this little rosary bracelet, she would say, this little rosary bracelet where she would pray the rosary here and there and whatnot, or just gave her comfort, right? Gave her comfort that God was in her life, in the household, in this whatever situation she was in. I'm sorry, excuse me. And so it was one week she lost the bracelet. And so you got to understand, like, we didn't go to church at the time. We were kind of really unchurched, to be honest. She had lost the bracelet. I'm sorry. Didn't know where to go. Didn't know where to find it. Didn't know where she had put it. And so a week had went by. And all of a sudden I come up to her. I say, "Hey, Mom, here you go." And I hand her the bracelet. And she's like, "Babe, where did you, how did you find this? Where did you get it?" And I said, like, in my, broken baby language, "Oh, the man told me. The man told me where it was." She said, "The man? What man?" And I said, "Mom, the man." And just walked away. And then I think it was maybe like a day after that encounter, Miss Terry Landry from State Farm in Abbeville, Louisiana, came to our house and gave my mom like this book. And it must have been like a book about Jesus or whatever. It might have even been like a Bible covering. I'm not really sure. But I walked by it. And all of a sudden, like when the book was by me and my mom, I pointed to her out of nowhere. I said, "Mom, that man told me where it was." And the cover was a cover of Jesus. It was the face of Jesus. And
how old were you then?
I was like 3 or 4 years old. And I have no recollection of this. This is something I experienced later in life when I started ministry and my mom started telling me these stories. And she was so like, she was kind of unchurched at the time, so she was scared. She didn't know what that meant. And then after that encounter, every now and then she'd see me talking to people or someone and looking up. But, kids have imagination, so she wasn't sure. So she was just really, when that happened with the book and the rosary, she was really like, shocked. So she went and talked to some priests and stuff like that, and they gave her some scenarios or maybe, why that happened or what's going on. And I'll be honest, I find it really funny. 20 something years later, I'm in full-time ministry. I don't think that's a coincidence. Because before I even got in the ministry, I didn't even know. They had never told me that story. I don't know why, but they had never told me that story too. I started really seeking the Lord and speaking in front of people. So,
when I was about 3 or 4, must have been about the same age, 3 or 4. I lived on Boulanger Street, and one day I was outside, and all of a sudden, something passed by slow, and I just watched it. And I ran inside and I said, Mom, God just passed by, She's like, what? So,
No way.
Children,
yeah,
they're sensitive.
Yeah, I think the innocence and the purity, God loves to use that.
So what else happened after that?
Yeah, so now these next two, I'm not more excited to tell you, but I have more of a recollection of it. And I was older and I could kind of understand, that it was God or God was in the middle of it all. And so there's two, I feel like those are miracles of my innocence, right? And then these next two, I would say I think this will be very encouraging to some people since we live in America. A miracle of providence, or provision. I guess a miracle of provision would be one. A miracle of provision and a miracle of like love and presence, right? And so the next, I would say, miracle would be probably 4 years ago. My grandmother had just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I had to sell my home, move in with her, and I was like the nighttime caregiver. And so that was a very hard season in my life in the sense of like spiritual season, like just a spiritual heaviness, trying to navigate that while also feeling called to be a minister and like supposed to be going out. Right? I can't go out because I have to take care of someone. And so that created a lot of tension. It created a lot of frustration in my humanity. And I was still trying to, figure out how to maneuver all that. And then I'll be honest, like as on a personal level, I started to cope with my grandmother's suffering in not the healthiest ways, ways in which I felt I had overcame and weren't never going to go back to. But I was. And so I was in a very numb headspace, I guess you can say. Like, I was doing retreats and talking about God's love and but yet I wasn't really desiring it that much. It was a very complex time for me, to the point where I think it was towards the end of the year, like 4 years ago, and I was thinking about getting out of ministry. I was thinking about completely giving up ministry and going into business. And not that business was bad. I mean, business is great. It's work. It's labor. There's a sanctity in that. And you can change people's lives and that in that way as well. But I had never felt God tell me to do that, right? Or lead me to do that in a sense. And so I was just going to walk away from ministry because I'll be honest, the financial aspect of being a full-time missionary evangelist was just weighing on me. I had a dying loved one, someone that has done so much for me, and I felt like I couldn't do much for her. All I could do was be there, and I know that counts for something. But as the man in me, I guess, how we were raised in America, like I wanted to do more. I wanted to be able to have the best of the best for her, a full-time, just everything. But I felt like I just couldn't do it, because I'm in ministry, and so I was just frustrated with all that. I said, what if this happens to my mom? Like, I won't be able to take care of her. Like, this is just, it was really frustrating me. I was like, so you know what? We're just going to walk away because financially, and I didn't have the right perspective when it came to donations, even though that's a holy thing to do. I just was in a very negative, numb headspace. So I was like, I'm done. Well, and you talked about this too before we even got on the podcast, about you can't make a mistake. I mean, you can make a mistake, but even in your mistakes, God's going to pull you. God's going to direct you, right? And so I'm drowning in all this, you can call it victim mentality, numbness, sorrow, suffering, all the above, right? I'm just sitting in it, still going to church, still trying to going to adoration, but just still sitting in my feelings, and not telling anyone. I'm looking for places to go move away. I look back and I laugh. I was gonna go to Miami. Like, what you gonna go to Miami for? Like, what are you gonna go do in Miami, dude? Come on, man. And looking at ways to go to Texas, just running, and but not telling anyone, right? Or sugarcoating it with nice language, right? All of a sudden, I get a phone call. As you know, like I said, golf's a part of my life and my journey. So I get a phone call from one of our community leaders. His name is Paul Whittington. He runs a vet clinic in Abbeville, Louisiana. He calls me and said, "Hey, Dust, man, a lot is happening, and you keep coming up, and I think I need to do something for you." And he's like, you probably don't know this, but you were on a podcast a while back. You said something. And think about all these things I'm telling you, I did for free. So just keep that in mind as I'm sharing the story about the miracle that's about to happen. You were on a podcast and you said something about David Bertrand and that family and how that was very influential in your life. Well, dude, it was just so weird. I went eat at some restaurant in Lafayette for my anniversary. I saw David and his wife there. I felt compelled to pay for them, so I paid for them. And then David was telling me it was one of the first times someone has ever paid for, his meal like that. And he's been in the restaurant industry for so long. And Dustin, like, I don't know if you remember, but you were part of the reason my wife became Catholic. You did her RCIA, you did her RCIA class one weekend. He was like, you just keep coming up, and man, I think I just need to take you to lunch and talk to you for a little bit and pass something along to you and tell me if we can do this. I'm like, yeah, sure. So we go to El Caminos. It's a place in Abbeville, one of my favorite places. So we go to El Caminos. We're having dinner, and he's telling me all these things. He's like, so listen, I say all that to say this. I don't know if you've noticed, but the last couple of years, in honor of an employee that's passed away, Calix, we've been doing a golf tournament fundraiser, and we've been picking a particular cause to give, to give the funds to each year. And he's like, I don't know, man. He's like, you keep popping up. Me and my wife are trying to figure out what cause we should give it to this year. And honestly, I think all those things that were happening is God telling me, we need to do it for your ministry and for your mission that you've been called to in our community, because you've done so much for our kids and whatnot. And so, do you mind if we do this for you? And I was like, what? And I said, Paul, I mean, you have no idea. I mean, you can definitely do this for him. I said, but beyond that, you are literally a hand of God right now. Like, you are God in the flesh right here, showing me that he's going to provide if he calls you to something. He said, what you mean? He said, well, I said, dude, I was about to like get out of ministry because of this particular situation in my life. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's just been hard, man. And I said, I had the insecurity of asking men that I know that are working hard for their families to support me. I said, and then with my grandmother, and I was like, man, I just was going to walk away. Best way I can explain it to you. He said, no, dude, you're not going to walk away. He said, because I know the kids that you're impacting. You impacted my life. We're not going to let you. And it was so wild because golf has been such a big part of my life. But yet I was so fearful to yet put on a golf tournament on behalf of what God had called me to do. That God had to literally raise up someone else to stand in the gap for me, to show me that my own mission's worth it. And not just do that, give me the proceeds that God's going to provide through their hard work. And to me, it was one of the most humbling things I've ever experienced, to see a hardworking man just do that. It's just against how we raised in America in a way, or at least where I'm from, my lived experience.
It was
right?
a successful tournament? Successful?
Yeah, and I don't mind sharing it because it's public knowledge. Yeah, they raised me $30,000. $30,000. And let me tell you something, for like a missionary evangelist single, that is a lot. That's plenty.
Yeah.
And so much so though, ignited something in me, right? That now October 4th, 2025, in a couple weeks, we'll be having our third annual golf.
So they had
fundraiser.
another one the next year too?
I took upon it myself to continue it. And
it's been bearing good fruit every time?
Bearing good fruit
Good
the
for
last
you.
3 years. And it's been averaging about the same each
Nice.
year. And it's one of the most humbling days of the year for me. Because I'm getting older, I had to do something like that to sustain the ministry, to keep going. And it was unbelievable. It really was unbelievable. Because I didn't tell anyone to do that. I didn't ask,
Right.
which woe is me. I should humble myself. And I am now in a place where I don't mind asking and offering an opportunity for them to give through that opportunity. So anyone out there, right, young, old, or in between, that, the scripture says the birds in the sky don't reap or sow, yet they get fed. How much more will he do for his sons and daughters that are called according to their purpose?
What's the name of the golf tournament?
The golf tournament is called the God Made Self-Driven Golf Fundraiser.
That's a
Yeah.
long name.
Well, God Made Self-Driven Tournament.
God Made Self-Driven Tournament.
Yep, that's the name of my ministry.
Okay.
So
God Made
GodMadeSelfDriven.org is my website, name of my nonprofit. And it supports confirmation retreats, pro-life activism, which soon to be like revival events, class retreats. It allows me to give books, T-shirts, faith-based apparel to the confirmation students, or just students that I'm ministering to. And so it's called the God Made Self-Driven Tournament, and it's a 3-man scramble. It's at Southern Oaks Country Club in Abbeville, Louisiana. It's pretty much my end goal is just have a community on a golf course, for a
And
day.
this next tournament, when is it going to be? The one coming up?
October 4th,
October 4th.
2025. So in about 2.5 weeks, we'll be having about 110 golfers on the golf course, food, all along the golf course, drinks. It's going to be, I love it because a lot of those guys have seen videos, right? But they never pray with me. They get to pray with me. I go to each team that day and I pray and I ask them what they need prayer for, and I enter into their lives, right? Because they're entering into mine, and so I get to pray with them, share stories with them of how God's changed people's lives throughout some of these events and just my missionary travels and whatnot. And so it's fun. That day is just a very humbling and exciting day for me. So it's October 4th, 2025, which is in 2 weeks. at Southern Oaks Country Club. So, yeah.
Well, I hope we have some golfers listening.
Right?
Hopefully
No.
they'll go play.
Yeah, definitely. And if you don't want to go play, just email me. We can talk about it. Ways you can help, whether it be prayer, volunteering at certain events, creating certain things at your church parish, whatever. It's everything's on the table. Truly, Father Champagne. I talked to him one time about my ministry. I said, Father Champagne, it's not focus. It's not a focus ministry. It's not Steubenville retreats. I said, it's just a blue collar ministry. Like we do one-on-one. He said, son, we need blue collar ministry. I said, and just to hear him affirming that was, that did a lot for me at that time too, because I think Father Champagne is just an amazing,
It's
amazing
wonderful
father.
to have the variety.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything better to do if you're a golfer than go and play golf and thinking about the Lord while you're doing it. Because we all think about it when we're making a tough shot.
Oh,
Help me get this one.
Yeah, like help me not get in the water. Yeah. And then I'll just kind of close with my last one, which is very near and dear and personal to my heart. And maybe you might not consider this a miracle, but it just touched me. And it just really moved me. So my grandmother passed away November 30th at 5:23 p.m. 2024 of last year. And my grandmother is like my mom, and she's probably the best spiritual example I had around me. Her fidelity and her consistency to the faith, to the holy day of obligation, to her rosary, to her acceptance of the simplicity of life with the Lord, will affect me for the rest of my life. But I miss her. Sorry for the people out there. I miss her so much, and but I know she's in a better place, and I know she's walking and talking. I'm pretty sure she's keeping heaven really, really clean right now, and has some good coffee for all the disciples. But there was a moment where the grief hit me in adoration, and I go to adoration once a week at midnight at St. Teresa in Abbeville. And I remember going in adoration, and it just all hit me to the point where I usually sit in the pews, and I kind of usually sit in the back because just late at night. Well, that particular night, I just felt so drawn to go like right next to the Eucharist and kneel. And there's a relic there from St. Therese of Lisieux, and so I felt so drawn to be so close to Jesus and like just really weep at his feet. And when I mean weep, I mean weep. Just talking about how, miss her and, can't wait to see her again. But I know she's with the best person that she can be with now. But just really having a vulnerable moment of just, yelling out, how I'm going to do this. Without her quiet support. And I kept seeing us like on a bench one day, on a bench together. I don't know why, but as I'm like by Jesus and I'm doing this, I keep seeing us like sitting on a bench. I don't know why. I even thought about, are you gonna take me one day in adoration on a bench? Like I don't know. I just kept seeing me and my grandmother in heaven on a bench. And one day, and so I leave adoration that night and I go to bed, and I wake up the next morning. And I have a Facebook notification. And I'm like, okay, whatever. That's normal, I guess. But I click and it's early in the morning. And some random girl from my community that I might have seen maybe once in my life, maybe twice, but definitely never had more than 2 words said to her, sends me this message. I don't really know you. Me and you have never talked. And I definitely don't know your grandmother. But I had a dream last night that I felt like I needed to tell you. I had a dream last night that you and your grandmother were sitting on a bench in heaven. Rick, listen, man. Man, I don't know what's next, man. I don't know. I don't know what's after this life, man. But Can't wait for that moment. Can't wait. Can't wait. And I mean, she has no relationship to my grandmother. She's never said a word to my grandmother. And so that miracle touched my heart. I'm a big baby, man. I'm sensitive when it comes to my grandmother. So, yeah, Rick, I would say that's my miracles of childhood, God's miracle of provision, and God's intimate miracle of love for me recently. And it's been awesome, man. I wouldn't have it any other way. And I really appreciate you creating this space for me to share those encounters, because guess what? The good news is those encounters aren't just for me, right? It's for every listener out there that even when you don't desire it, he wills to do these things for you. But especially if you desire it, he's gonna absolutely do these things for you. No matter how far and wide you've been, he desires to affirm who he is through miracle signs and wonders. And so my prayer for anyone out there that's listening, invite the Holy Spirit into your heart, into your mind, and be expected to see him, hear him, and in times feel his presence, you know?
Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Dustin. Hope to see you again.
I appreciate it.